Hey everybody, it's Stacy Statterman. So we are here for another edition of the Level Up Leadership interviews or conversations really. And of course, I'm focused on this year especially because this idea of renew, pivot, and thrive maybe has never been more appropriate given the kind of time we've had for the last 18 months or so. And as many of you regular viewers know, I'm very inspired by this idea that the future does not fit in the containers of the past. It never did, but maybe especially now it does not work that way. So this kind of experience and opportunity to level up is the anchor of the conversations that I'm having. And I'm really excited to have my friend and colleague and somebody I've really gotten to know so much better over the crazy time we've had, David Landgraf. So David Landgraf is founder and chief experience officer of Make It Happen Management. And he brings to the table a ton of experience and stories and ideas and innovations in the event and conference space, design, production, hybrid, virtual. He's done it all. Former Blackstone, former Goldman. Super interesting stories about his roots at the National Security Agency. So you're going to want to get to know David if you don't know him already. But David, thank you so much for being here. It's great to have a conversation. And I know this is going to be a good one because we've talked a lot about this idea of leveling up over the last year.
Well, thank you, Stacy, and to everyone out there. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I appreciate it. It's great to talk to you in this forum.
Really. Yeah, love it. Love it. So let me start with something that's so obvious and really, to me, very connected to the idea of leveling up. You named your firm that you started a few years ago before the pandemic, Make It Happen. Tell us a little bit about the roots of that. And am I right? Is it connected to this idea of leveling up?
It is. And I started Make It Happen in January of 2018. Because it became my moniker and my mantra, as well as my reputation. So I would close my door, and everyone, all my clients in financial services would call Landgraf. He can make it happen. And that was everywhere from logisticals, venues, technology, and kind of bridging that into live events, because the live events are actually the business people and culture. And engagement of employees and clients for that purpose. So that became my moniker. And when I actually called my trademark lawyer to have it trademarked, he was like, "You would not believe it, Make It Happen, actually, and here's your choices." And it was Make It Happen Management.
Awesome, awesome. So it sounds like it's not just something about sort of you and your past experience. It sounds like it's very much a forward-thinking approach as you approach everything.
It is, and it is funny because Make It Happen. I actually have a bracelet that I wear every day because it's a mantra, right? And the other tag was I came up with the tagline "Events Reimagined" in 2018 for Make It Happen, and to this day, it is so appropriate when talking about all of this that we are reimagining the way we do events in our industry.
So, I mean, I have to state the obvious. I mean, didn't the whole events industry just collapse? And, what's going on? I mean, how is it possible in this, period of time where we've sent everyone home and gathering together is just something we're starting to do now?
Well, I think the one principle that it has collapsed, and small business have been decimated, and people have not been able to gather due to local restrictions, right, and government restrictions on it. So yes, it has been decimated. But what I think we have that I've done was taken those innovations and that technology and that need to bring people together in alternative forms and technology have led me through live virtual engagements, everywhere from cocktail mocktail classes, which started with friends. You remember we were at the very beginning, we were doing a benefit for City Harvest.
Yep.
And food sustainability and food waste is another passion of mine. And we for $25, you could come in and and participate in a wine tasting with a sommelier and buy the wines, right? So that innovation, to me, is what will lead us into the future and continue to do that, because the way that we have to engage people and the way we're doing it now, or Zoom, and how you address Zoom fatigue, we have to continue to do that. And I've heard statistics that the events industry had to advance itself in 1 year, in what it's been working on for close to 3 to 5 years. So that forum has pushed our industry ahead. And what I've been doing for many years at at Blackstone and at Goldman Sachs and at Barclays was engaging people in mediums and connecting. So I created Chill and Connect, right? So chillandconnect.com takes you right back to the virtual platform on my website, because that's what I wanted to do. Was I wanted to connect with friends, I wanted to connect with family, and how could we create engaging moments to do that?
So it's been so interesting because I've been, of course, watching your journey and had the great opportunity to talk to you through the process. And I have been struck by your sense of hope and kind of maybe a practice of like not just jumping in the worst view of what's possible, but there's a lot of other people who have had a hard time embracing the unknown and kind of throwing the rule book out. And I wanted you to comment a little bit more on something that we had an exchange about this to prepare for this time. You shared this statement: we are all reimaginers, the inventors, and the change makers. Talk about that, because some people don't feel very connected maybe to these big words, but you believe it's critical, I think.
Right, and this goes back to the innovation that will get us through, because this is the Roaring 20s, and what we are doing for clients to engage them, their families, and companies as well. It is new ways of people engagement activation for businesses, brands, and cultures, right? So, for example, we had a brief conversation a while ago of how people are going to engage their employees on their first day back in office, right? And how do you create that sense of lead with empathy, lead with care? We all have a responsibility as event managers for duty of care, and how we can make that happen for the employees to express the corporate people, brand, and cultures. So that's what why I love this, and it's why I wrote it on my blog, is because this is the Roaring 20s, and no better time for this country, as you see from our current administration, focusing on infrastructure and change.
So it's interesting. It sort of sounds like the smart organizations out there are recognizing that the people who've been responsible for the gatherings, the collectives, creating the environments for conversation, boy, they have to be right at the table during this kind of go back to in-person work. Is that what you're seeing? Is that what you're...
That's the value proposition. Yes, that's the value add that we are bringing as event professionals and producers and planners to the table, of alternative ways to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like, I mean, it sounds a little. I was reading something, I don't know, last week, that there was a company out west that essentially issued a mandate, said, get back in the office in the next 2 weeks, or we're going to cut your pay. That seems like a very different vibe than what you're advocating for. But it's sort of, the hard thing. That's one of the big hard things that we're all kind of having to work through. So I'm curious, how do you think companies have to balance this idea of like, the celebration and the almost helping people process? I mean, events will, it seems, play a big role in that potentially.
Yeah, it's an employee engagement again. So you are the ones that are responsible for that, and realize that it's duty of care for your employees, and their families, because that's the culture in which you have built. And the more you define your business culture and people, then we can come up with those solutions to activate your employees in a very caring, communicative, innovative way.
Love it. I wondered if I know a little bit of this story, but would you talk about the work that you did with the vaccine program in New York City? Because I feel like that's an excellent example of this. That could be a really awful environment, but you did. I don't want to put words in your mouth. Talk about that a little bit, because I think it's really a great example.
Yeah. There was a great meme going around that if you wanted to cure COVID, you hire an event planner.
Oh,
An event planner would have cured this long before, right? And I'll never forget that meme. And I'm not a big collector of memes at all, but it was one that resonated. So on January 9th, I got a phone call from an industry colleague who had been notified that could we show up at a vaccine center at 10 o'clock in the morning and meet with the management for the New York City Department of Health, Dr. Dave Choksi, next to his office, where they were set up a vaccine center. So show up day one, 10 o'clock, and I, for those that don't know me, and Stacy, my experience at the National Security Agency, I put myself right in the middle of it, right? So after about an hour, 45 minutes, we're sitting there, and I'm like, I get impatient, and I'm just like, I see inefficiency, and I just beeline right to fix it. And I'm like, okay, we got to do this because and there was just no process, procedures, or protocols because it was very early. New York City was very desperate, and it was a desperate time for people. And again, leading with empathy and humor, a little bit of humor. And so part of my brand is I have orange. So I put on my orange scarf and a white coat, stood up, and started people management. And literally doing the attestation and doing all of this process. And literally at the end of the shift, I went home and I was wiped. It was a 12-hour shift. And I have to tell you, it was the stories and the people that I've met are still friends and relationships to this day, because we were in an unprecedented time of desperation. And so I took it they were running 250 vaccines in a 12-hour shift, Stacy. And so what happened as I was working 5 to 6 days a week, 12-hour shifts, because it became like, I'm going to put myself in the middle of this again, and we're just going to make this happen, right? 29 days later, it was Moderna. The owner of the company came in and said, David, are you ready for this week's shift? And we've got so many second appointments, that we've got to do this. And I said, sure. Well, why was it so different yesterday and then tomorrow? He said, if you remember, 29 days ago, you started here and you took it from 250 vaccines in a 10-hour period to 755 vaccines in one day.
wow.
And that's why you were here. And that was so rewarding.
Yeah, really incredible. And what I'm also struck by is, and I think this is maybe a great message of this idea of leveling up too, is, the future doesn't fit in the containers of the past, and there will be skills that will need new places to be expressed, and there'll be new needs. And it isn't, yes, we will be sad that some things will be different, maybe permanently, but all the new that is coming is quite exciting.
And I think it's to have, Harvard Business Review did a great story at the beginning of COVID of what this all was about. And it was about bereavement and death. And we've all suffered in certain ways, either personally, professionally, monetarily, and it's emotionally. And so once I read that article at the very beginning, and I identified with that friends had passed away and what I could do, it really kind of gave me a sense of, okay, now put your bootstraps on and let's make it happen, because this is the roaring 20s and time of innovation. And I love being a change agent. And that's what I believe live events bring to my clients and to both on a personal and professional level.
Now, and you also, of course, you have a great batch of your work is around corporations and businesses that there is emotion involved in that, but I am struck by the fact that you do work in high end celebrations where emotions are probably the lead in the conversation. How are people having to rethink some of that and bring innovation to legacy and protocols that we've all dreamed of, that ultimate wedding or environment where we're going to gather. What are you bringing into those conversations?
Well, it's communication. It's lead with empathy first, right? And it's funny because I had a client ask me, what's the difference between a corporate event and a personal event, a wedding, a bat mitzvah, an anniversary, a milestone celebration? And I said, it is basically the same. I'm telling the client's story. I'm leading with the client's story, or I'm leading with the company's business, people, brand, and culture, which are the pillars of any foundation to sell their products and services. So I lead with that in a way that you want to tell the client's authentic story. And I think now more than ever, people are leading with authenticity in a time where we have all brought, because everyone has experienced this into either together or separately. And how we've done that in 9/11 or any other world crisis that we have gone through something together, you bridge that connection and that authenticity together. So I hope that answered your point, and where we can all innovate and collaborate and execute gracefully with empathy.
Yeah, love it. Love it. Those are great tips. So for people who are out there still feeling maybe very unsettled in their business, maybe they're, a newish entrepreneur, or maybe they're in the events and conferences, the tourism travel spaces where things are still pretty uncertain in some pockets. What are your marching orders for them? And it kind of dovetails, I think, a little bit by what we hear from Scott Galloway. Yes, this is an incredible time of opportunity, but it's also a time to repair and restore, and that may be about our businesses or our mental health. It could be about a whole variety of things. What are your marching orders?
Well, it's interesting because when at the vaccine center, the medical field calls it a vaccine time period, an appointment frame, an event. And it was so interesting how that was an aha moment for me, because what is an event? An event is anywhere where it's engagement. So literally back to work programs, right? That's an event because you're dealing with people's emotions, you're dealing with process, procedures, and protocols, right? And you want to make sure that you're leading with that in a way that people find it an experience, because you will always remember the first restaurant you sat in without a mask. You will always remember the first person you hugged after this entire thing. And colleagues are calling, and coworkers, and engaging again. But it's, again, lead with empathy. Make sure you understand where that person's frame of reference is and what they're comfortable with, and lead and make it happen.
Yeah, love it. Love it. I mean, we basically are going to have to teach people on scale how to come together again.
Yeah. So I made it was very funny when New York when the CDC dropped its mask mandates outside. What you saw was a connection. It's almost like a security blanket, right? Everyone stayed and wearing their masks outside. And I made a conscious effort to really give that up and be that example. I mean, I put myself in the face of danger at the vaccine center, right? Unvaccinated, and then went into that. So I believe that innovation, if you can see and be the change that you want to be in our society, you can make a difference and you can make it happen.
Love it. Love it. David, we're always really good with like 3-hour conversations, but But I'm going to encourage us to wrap it up, to let our people who have been following along get back to their jam. But I'm really happy. David Landgraf, awesome. You always bring so much wisdom to every interaction I have with you. And I want to encourage everybody who may be out there watching this somewhere along the ways, do connect with David. He's obviously on LinkedIn. You check him out on his website. And he also has an opportunity to engage with people who are looking to maybe figure out how live events are going to play a role, maybe in their back to work strategy, or just how to look at things differently. He's a man who makes it happen and has a huge network of people that help in that process. So I would encourage all of you guys to connect with David and have a good conversation. So thank you, David. It's been really marvelous.
Thanks for the opportunity. And to you, thanks for all your support through this pandemic, because you're making a difference as well.
Oh, thank you so much.
You really are.
Good. You got to find the people that you're on the same page with and keep linking arms and moving forward. So
right. We didn't even get into mentorship, right?
No, we didn't. That'll be maybe my next iteration. Anyway, guys, renew, pivot, thrive in 2021. Take the lead on your own situation. Lead yourself. Level up. This is a perfect time to try something new and make those adjustments that you've been thinking about for a while. So I will be back next Wednesday with another great person who will enlighten us with some ideas and tips. And until then, we'll see you soon. Okay.